Do you ever say to your kids, quit crying, stop crying?
All the time,
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if
it's
that's a good thing.
it's not a good thing. And it's funny how we've dug into this stuff, man. Like we spent hours and hours with lots of dudes talking about these types of things, and I still will justify it like, well, I wouldn't say it if you didn't cry so much. Like you don't have to cry about like what I found now is instead of saying stop crying, like I'm aware of like saying, not saying stop crying. But now I'm like, I say things like, do you think you have to cry about everything? Like, is everything cause for crying? Or like maybe we can reserve it for things that are not what you're crying about right now.
For just like the real things that you should be crying about.
Yeah, yeah. Because I know you have these emotions. I just want to invalidate them real quick and
Yeah.
and make sure that. And here's the thing, dude. Like, and I'm seeing my boys say it, the things that I said to each other, and my daughter too, actually saying it. They're all saying it to each other, which is that's the problem with it, right? Like, I'm not suggesting that we validate every single emotion everybody has, especially in kids, right? But the idea of just stop crying is not a healthy idea. It's not where I want to be, anyways. I don't want to raise children who are emotionally incapable of expressing and processing how they feel. And that's when you just tell them, stop being mad, stop being angry, stop crying. And usually it's not those things. We usually are like, we don't usually don't say stop being mad, right? Or stop being angry. We say things like stop crying. Don't express that emotion. The other ones they may get in trouble for, but it's just a different tenor. And I think it's the way it's breaking out of this idea of really, I mean, for me, how I was raised, right?
Yeah. Well, and we're telling them to, hey, don't be vulnerable. You can't be vulnerable, right? It's interesting. The other day, I've had my sister and brother-in-law and their family stay with us for a couple of weeks before they go back overseas to do missionary work. And on the day we said goodbye, like I was sad, man. Like I might not see my sister and their family for a long time. Um, and I was crying. I was crying like pretty heavily, because I don't know when I'm going to see him next. And my son, he's 5. He saw that. He watched me cry, and he didn't know like what to do. Like he didn't know how to take it. And he was like, "Dad," he said to me, he's like, "Dad, you're crying." It was almost like he was like super surprised that he'd never seen me cry. And I feel like he has seen me cry, but maybe not that often. But it was like a real surprise for him to see me cry. And I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay for me to cry. Like I'm sad. I love my sister, and I'm not going to see her for a while, and I'm sad about that. So it's okay to cry. And it was just like this, like I could see him like just kind of trying to process that of like, oh man, my dad is crying. I've never seen this before. And I know you've had some experiences and thoughts on that, and we've talked to other men in the mastermind group about this exact thing, and I think a lot of us have a hard time showing emotion because of how we were raised.
Yeah, and my kids said it recently too. They said, "Man, Dad, I've just never seen you cry," and I can't remember what the context of the conversation was, but it's I think back to some of the most influential dudes in my life. One of them in particular was like one of the most manly men. He was a mechanic. He was an entrepreneur. He owned his mechanic uh, shop in Pensacola. He hand built his own house on Gulf Shores. Like he literally just built it. And while I was stationed there, he dug this giant man-made pond, and he welded a bridge to go over it and had fish. Like, dude, I mean, the guy was like, by all definitions, was a manly man, right? Or whatever, whether you think those definitions are appropriate or not, but he was a manly man. And dude cried a lot. And he was also he was a very spiritual man. He was very, very plugged into the church and just loved Jesus. And dude cried a lot, man. We used to make fun of him because he'd cry so much. Like, he would just cry, and it was awesome. It was awesome. And his kids got to experience that. And so this idea that it's not manly, I mean, what is the shortest verse in the Bible? Jesus wept, right? I mean, Jesus,
Yep.
pretty incredible man himself. And so, this idea that it's inappropriate or we shouldn't do it, like, we really have to be intentional and redefine, what that is. And that's for each of us, for men in our households, right? For men, the way we conduct ourselves, that's for us to, at a minimum, give it due thought. Like, what are you actually saying, and what are you doing when you're saying don't do this thing? And just consider it, right? Just consider it. And what is it that is that truly a beneficial, and what's so wrong about crying anyways? Like, what is it about it that threatens, oh, you're less of a man because you cry? Really? Because I think if you can express yourself and you're emotionally mature and secure enough to cry, I think that's a pretty strong trait.
It actually feels pretty good sometimes too, just to
Man,
get
sometimes you just need a good cry.
Good cry,
You just need a good cry.
Yeah, good stuff, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna go
cry
in the corner right now.
I'm sure you will. You shouldn't cry in the corner. Go cry. Just walk out into the office in the middle and just cry and just be like, I just want to cry from the top of a mountain.
I'm on an emotional roller coaster.
That's good. It's good. Ask good questions.
See you.